Hello, everybody. My name is Michelle Jones, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's workshop. I'm so excited to have you all here with us. And I'm also excited to have Dr. Diana Fleming. She's our PhD nutritionist here at Full Plate Living. Hi, Diana.
Hello, Michelle and Amy and everyone else.
I am so ready to see what you're going to talk to us about when it comes to heart disease today. Heart disease is a serious topic and it's so important to a lot of us. Everybody knows someone with heart disease, or maybe personally we have heart disease. So it's a very timely topic. And I also want to introduce you to Amy. Amy Hannes is going to do all of our chat, and she's going to put up anything that has to do with technology today. She will handle it. So hi,
That's
Amy.
Right. Hi everyone. I see a lot of people have already found the chat, so make sure you find that. Say hello, tell us where you're joining us from. We are so glad to have you here today. The big thing is this is technology. It just is what it is. So if we happen to get disconnected, give us a second, we'll refresh our screen. The same goes for you. Sometimes it might be your connection versus our connection. So one of the best things you can do is refresh your connection, or either completely go out and come back in. We have found that the Chrome browser works really well with the service we use to do these workshops. So those are just some tips for doing this. Also, we'll have a handout at the end of the presentation with a good overview of everything. So don't feel like you have to get a pen and pad out and make all these notes. We're going to share kind of a highlight of that with you at the end. So welcome. Glad to have you here today.
Also, at the end of the workshop, we are going to take your questions. So hang around. If you have questions during the workshop, go ahead and put them in the chat. We're going to flag them as a question so that we can get to them at the end. And we'll also give you a chance, if you have questions at the end, for you to put them in. So at this time, I think we're going to go ahead and just get started. Diana, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, so we're talking about 5 healthy heart habits. So I think we're all aware of the fact that heart disease is the leading cause of death, but it's been that way over 100 years, since 1921. But here's the good news. It is largely preventable. And that's what we want to talk about today. What can we do to prevent heart disease? And before we dive into that, there are 2 important considerations we want to share with you. The first one is, if you are under medical supervision for any reason, please consult with your doctor before following any of the recommendations in this presentation. And if you suspect that you may have heart disease, but have never been professionally diagnosed, please consult with your doctor to get the appropriate tests done. All right. So a few statistics. There is about 610,000 people in the US that die from heart disease every year, and that's 1 in every 4 deaths. And it is the leading cause of death for men, women, and people of most racial and ethnic groups. So unfortunately, it is an equal opportunity killer. Now, the most common type of heart disease, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, is coronary heart disease, otherwise known as CHD, or coronary artery disease, the same disease, different name, coronary artery disease, CAD. This is what we're going to focus on. And the healthcare costs from coronary heart disease are staggering, more than $200 billion a year. So if we can do things to prevent this disease, not only is it going to save us money personally, but it's going to help the economy. So why is it coronary heart disease? Well, the heart is a muscle. And it's a very, very busy muscle. It's keeping us alive by beating 100,000 times a day, approximately. And if you live to be 70 years old, that heart muscle has been beating 2.5 billion times. So this muscle needs nourishment. It needs oxygen, it needs glucose, it needs waste products taken away. And so the muscle is fed by the arteries called coronary arteries. You can see them in this picture. and they sit on the heart sort of like in the shape of a crown. So coronary means crown. So coronary heart disease is really a disease of these arteries, not the muscle per se, but the arteries that feed the heart muscle. And so this is what's going on in these arteries. You can see in the top picture, the graphic, a healthy coronary artery should be clean. There should be no blockage in that artery, sort of a smooth lining inside the artery, and they should be soft, not soft, but flexible, not stiff, is what I meant to say. So what happens in coronary heart disease is you get a narrowing of that opening, and there's a fatty deposit, and the arteries get stiffer. So there's a blockage of the blood flow to the heart muscle in these arteries. And here's another way to look at it, another view, a cross-sectional view. The process that's going on is called atherosclerosis. You probably all heard this word at some point or another. And so what's happening is you can see the healthy coronary artery, and then there's an injury to it. And then that injury results in fatty deposits, which narrow the opening. The arteries are also getting stiffer. And you can see when you have a narrower opening, you've got less blood flow to the heart muscle. And then if a blood clot comes along, you can block off the blood supply to the muscle behind that blood clot, and now you might have a heart attack. So that's what's going on basically in coronary heart disease. Now, when somebody has coronary heart disease, they can have chest pain. They can have a heart attack, as I just mentioned. They can even have heart failure, and then sometimes arrhythmias are involved. That means the rhythmic contraction of the heart is not normal, it becomes abnormal. So these are things that are associated with coronary heart disease. Now let's look at some risk factors. Now, what is a risk factor? A risk factor means that it's something in your life that increases your chances of having heart disease. So there are non-modifiable risk factors. These are things we really can't do anything about. So age is a risk factor. That means the older you get, the greater is your risk of heart disease. Gender is a risk factor. Men tend to have an increased risk, greater risk than women. Genes play a role. If you have a family member, father, mother, or siblings that have heart disease, that can increase your risk. And then ethnicity. Certain ethnic groups have increased risk of heart disease. And then things that happen to you in early development in the womb and during childhood can also increase your risk. These are things we really can't do anything about. But here's the good news, and this is why it's preventable. There are risk factors that we can do something about. We call them modifiable risk factors. And when we modify these risk factors, it can help prevent heart disease. So here are the 5 that we're going to talk about in greater detail. Smoking, physical inactivity, poor sleep, being overweight, and eating an unhealthy diet. And the good news is these are all lifestyle habits we can do something about to prevent heart disease. And to me, that is great news. So let's dive right in with smoking, the first modifiable risk factor to prevent heart disease. Stopping smoking. And here's the reason why. Smokers have 2 to 4 times increased risk of developing heart disease than someone who doesn't smoke. And if you smoke a pack a day, which is pretty typical for smokers, you double your risk of developing heart disease than compared to somebody who doesn't smoke. So what does smoking have to do with heart disease? A lot. Smoking causes an instant and long-term increase in your heart rate and your blood pressure, which are involved in increasing risk of heart disease. And then we know in cigarette smoke, there's carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide likes to bind to our hemoglobin and take the place of oxygen. So that means we're getting less oxygen to the heart muscle, and that is not a good thing. The heart muscle needs the oxygen to do its job well. And then smoking, the smoke promotes atherosclerosis at every single level, at injuring the lining of the arteries, increasing the plaque buildup, causing the arteries to be thicker, stiffer. And then smoking increases the risk of forming a blood clot, which we talked about, and that can stop blood flow to sections of the heart. So what's the good news about smoking? Stopping. So the health benefits of quitting smoking begin immediately, and I found this amazing. 20 minutes after you quit smoking, your heart rate drops. That means your heart doesn't have to work as hard. 12 hours after you quit, the carbon monoxide levels in your blood drop to normal. That means you're getting more oxygen to the heart muscle. And then within 4 to 10 years of quitting, your risk of heart disease drops to that of somebody who never smoked. So that's amazing good news. So if you are smoking or you know someone that's smoking and they need help, just go to smokefree.gov, and there's all kinds of wonderful free information and resources to help you quit. All right, number 2, you need to get moving. Now, Amy, you may not know this, but Amy is an exercise physiologist. So Amy, talk to us about the importance of exercise to prevent heart disease.
Well, I think there's so many different threads that kind of go through this whole presentation. I mean, just from quitting smoking and how quickly our bodies can just come back, and just what it can do is just phenomenal. And even with exercise, if you're not a fan of exercise, call it physical activity, call it get moving, call it whatever you want. But really, it's an excellent way to prevent heart disease. As you can see, all the phenomenal benefits that it can have. Pick the ones that are, your top reasons, and really focus on why you're wanting to get physical active. You can just see so many different ones there. And then, we don't really think about it, but it's, people with different risk factors. It's, people with risk factors of heart disease who engage in regular physical activity. I think the regular is a big key here. Have lower death rates than people with no risk factors who aren't physically active. And then you have people with heart disease who are physically active, fit, and they live longer and have fewer heart attacks than even patients who aren't physically fit. So it just shows really the power that getting your bodies moving. It's just, to me, a lot of times finding those keywords that we want to use so that it's not a negative experience. Of course, the best kind for heart health, we want to get that heart muscle pumping. Aerobic exercise is going to be the best. It's that steady rhythmic movement. We're trying to get our heart rates up. It just makes it a more efficient muscle. So no different than, lifting weights. Aerobic exercise is kind of how we strengthen our heart. So there's so many different things that you can do. I know for me, I love Zumba, I love dancing, I love going for walks, hikes, those type of things. It's figuring out which one you like best. But really the goal, there are prescriptions for physical activity, and they want you to at least get 150 minutes in a week of moderate intensity. What does moderate intensity really mean? You should be able to talk in phrases. If you can talk in complete sentences like we're doing here, you probably need to step up the pace or make it a little bit more taxing on yourself. But you can break it up. It doesn't have to be at one time. 30 minutes, 5 days a week is an example. You can break it down even into smaller segments if needed. Any amount of time is beneficial. And that's been some really cool research we've seen. One of the things we do for our Full Plate Living community members is we have activity challenges sometimes. So we have an active 15 just to get you up, get you, focus on just 15 minutes of your day. Tell us how you did, tell us what you did. We kind of get to cheer you on in that. And that happens in our private Facebook community. We love seeing what everyone's doing. And this has been our challenge for this month because it is Heart Health Month. So it's definitely something you can start with. Start with 15 minutes and then work your way up to more time. Do what you enjoy, mix it up, include a friend or loved one. Sometimes that loved one can even be a four-legged friend. So just, make sure you're enjoying it. The other thing with accountability with having someone else too is that, you can kind of, get each other motivated to do more than you probably normally would have just by yourself.
Especially helpful when you don't feel like doing it.
Over to Michelle. She's done lots of research on sleep.
I have. I do love to sleep. I think most of us do when it's restful sleep. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us have a hard time getting in the adequate amount of sleep. And so sleep and getting enough sleep is another way to help prevent heart disease. So sleep deprivation is real in today's society, and we all struggle. Sometimes we have insomnia, sometimes we just literally cannot sleep through the whole entire night. So sleep deprivation is not just not getting enough sleep, but not getting the right quality of sleep. So not getting enough of that deep sleep that we all need, that rejuvenates our body. And it can be caused by a lot of different things. Some of us have very poor habits. We stay on our phones too late at night, and that blue light makes it harder for us to fall asleep. Sometimes it's the lifestyle choices that we have. Maybe we like drinking caffeine too close to bedtime, or maybe we don't like being active. We have work obligations that keep us late at night because we're so stressed about work that we don't prioritize sleep. There's a lot of things that can add up. But here's the bottom line that kind of should help us change our perspective on sleep. That sleep deprivation, when it's chronic, it's strongly associated with an increased risk of coronary heart disease and also related factors. So it's not just heart disease itself, but it increases the risk of being overweight. It increases your cholesterol levels, inflammation, heart attack, high blood pressure, stroke, diabetes. All of these things are increased risks, are more likely to happen if you are not getting enough sleep at night. So how can you get enough sleep? We all struggle with that. The goal is to get between 7 to 9 hours, and it's different for every person. Some people are happy with 7 hours. Some people really do better with 9 hours of sleep. I'm one of those people. I prefer 9 hours. My husband is 7 hours. So sometimes it's finding that balance when you feel most rested. So here are some healthy tips. If you look at the HARP acronym, think of how soothing harp music is. And if you take each one of those first letters, it can help you plan or come up with ways to get more restful sleep. The first one, the most important, is having a regular sleep schedule. That means going to bed around the same time and waking up around the same time every day, even on weekends, even if you don't have to go to work. Avoid your screens. That means all screens, television, your phones, video games, tablets, computers, about 90 minutes before bedtime. And again, we're talking about that blue light that interrupts our sleep. We have receptors in our eyes that get excited by blue light. And so it kind of moves your need to sleep back a little bit. It keeps you awake longer. Keep your room, think of it like a cozy little cave. You want it to be cool, dark, quiet, and comfortable. So creating that environment where you feel like you can just fall asleep as soon as you get in is perfect. And then practice a wind down ritual. Have habits that you do right before bedtime. Maybe you're brushing your teeth and you read a little bit before you go to sleep. Maybe you have a bedtime routine with your children where you read them a story, or you just cuddle together and talk for 10, 15 minutes every night. Whatever the routine is, try to do it every night so your body starts to anticipate sleep as the next step. If you want more tips on sleep, go ahead and visit the sleepfoundation.org. There's a plethora of information on there, but they do also have healthy sleep hygiene. So these are just tips to helping you sleep better. And lastly, don't ignore sleep deprivation. If you have chronic sleep deprivation and you've tried all the tips out there and they still aren't working for you, it's best to consult with your doctor and refer you to a sleep specialist that can make sure you don't have some sort of a sleeping disorder. It's best to do that and not try to self-medicate, because medication does come with side effects.
Great.
So
Thank you,
next up-
Michelle.
Yeah.
Okay, tip number 4, or habit number 4, is to lose excess weight. And this is really important because excess weight and especially the weight around, excess weight around the waist, called abdominal adiposity. That means you have more fat in the middle. That's dangerous because it indicates fat that is inside around your organs. So these excess weight in general and excess abdominal adiposity contribute not only to the development of heart disease, but death from heart disease. So we know that compared with normal weight heart patients, patients with excess weight experience heart attacks at an earlier age. They have heart disease over the greater proportion of their life, and they tend to die sooner. So weight is definitely a risk factor for heart disease, and not only heart disease itself, but all the other associated factors as well. So Weight gain is important, and we know that gaining weight comes from eating too much of the wrong kinds of foods. So a critical strategy for weight loss to prevent heart disease is not to decrease the portions of the same kinds of food you always have been eating, but to change the kind of foods you eat, which is a perfect segue into habit number 5. This is the most important heart disease prevention habit. And that is to eat a plant predominant diet. So this is what we're going to talk about in greater detail. So what you want to go from is the typical American diet, which has been abbreviated SAD, the standard American diet, to a plant predominant diet. So first we're going to briefly talk about what are the characteristics of the standard American diet, and then we will talk about the plant predominant diet. So the standard American diet is characterized by a high saturated fat intake, and not only saturated fat, but trans fat. It also has a high sugar intake and refined grains, and I'll explain those in a minute a little bit more. And with this comes low fiber intake. So it's a low fiber way of eating. And because it's low fiber, there's a low intake of foods that have fiber. So that would be fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans. And with that comes generally an inadequate intake of various vitamins and minerals and antioxidants that we need to be healthy. So here are the foods that constitute the standard American diet. These are foods that are predominantly eaten at like every meal, day after day. So it's highly processed convenient foods, fried foods, fast foods, refined grains, that's the white flour products, white rice, white pasta, lots of sweets, sugar sweetened beverages of all kinds, including alcohol, high fat dairy products like butter and cheese and cream cheese and eggs, and now tropical vegetable oils, red meat, and processed meats. So those are the foods that are predominant in the standard American diet. Now we know from research that the direct cause of coronary heart disease is an elevated LDL, or bad cholesterol, as it's commonly called. And what directly elevates LDL is too much saturated and trans fat. And I mentioned these as characteristic of the standard American diet. So I just want to spend a moment just reminding us of the sources of saturated and trans fat in the standard American diet. So, you know, these are pictures that we just saw: the red meat, the processed meats, poultry, full fat dairy, tropical oils. And for trans fat, it's important to know that these are in a lot of processed foods, partially hydrogenated oil, as well as fast food, restaurant food, and deep fried foods. So now let's switch over and talk about what a plant predominant diet is. Another word for a plant predominant diet, another name for it, is a high fiber diet. And a plant predominant diet is made of predominantly whole, unprocessed plant foods, or fiber foods, because fiber is only found in plants. So it's a high fiber diet. That means there's going to be a high intake of foods that are rich in fiber: fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans. And these foods happen to be rich in vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, so that's going to provide an abundance of these, what are called micronutrients. And this way of eating is going to be low in saturated fat and trans fat, as well as low in added sugars and refined sugars. So I'm going to quickly go through the foods that are going to be predominant in a plant diet, high fiber diet. Beans. These are the richest foods of fiber in all plant foods. Lots of vegetables, lots of fresh fruit, and especially fruits that help to keep blood sugar levels lower, because elevated blood sugar, which increases risks of diabetes, is also associated with heart disease. So the best fruits are berries of all kinds, fresh or frozen unsweetened, fruits with cores like apples and pears, fruits with pits like peaches, nectarines, plums, and then all the citrus fruits: lemons, limes, oranges, clementines, grapefruit. And then, of course, whole grains. These are the grains that have no fiber removed, no nutrition lost. And the best ones happen to be the cooked whole grains. These are the ones that help keep blood sugars lower, which is also a factor in heart disease. So the third characteristic of whole grains, besides being cooked, is larger particle size. And you can see in the graphic there, the larger the particle size, the better the blood sugars. So you want to focus on the larger particle size whole grains like oat groats in this example, or old-fashioned oats or steel-cut oats. And here are a list, I think these are going to be in our handout, of some of the best cooked whole grains. Quinoa, you can see barley, farro, black rice, wild rice, whole oat groats, steel-cut oats. These all help to keep blood sugars lower, which is actually helpful in preventing heart disease. And then another fiber food group that helps to prevent heart disease are nuts. And we're going to give you some practical tips on actual portion sizes for these. And then nut butters. Just be sure that those nut butters have no added sugar or fat. So to sum this all up in a visual, I love these visuals. They're easy to grasp. They're easy to remember. So if you look at the plate on the left, this plate is characteristic of the standard American diet, where 75% or the majority of foods that are eaten, processed foods, have no or low fiber. And then only 25% of the plate are fiber foods. So what you want to do is flip that around and eat, as the visual on the right, a high fiber diet where 75% of what you're eating, approximately, or the majority of what you're eating, are these whole unprocessed fiber foods. And then the foods that have no fiber, or the processed foods that are low in fiber, they're only 25% of your plate. So it's an easy way to think about what you want to do and where you want to go. And so now we're going to make this very practical in terms of our 75-25% full plate approach. And so 75% is going to be the whole unprocessed fiber foods. And so here are some actual practical guidelines of amounts of these fiber foods that you want to aim for each day. So the beans would be 1 cup to 1.5 cups of cooked beans, and it doesn't have to be at one meal. You can divide that up. 1 cup of raw or 2 cups of cooked greens. These are especially nutrient-rich vegetables that are helpful for preventing heart disease as well as diabetes. And so you want to have 1 cup raw or 2 cups cooked and mix it up. Doesn't have to be the same greens. There's so many different kinds: kale, collards, broccoli. And then at least 2 cups of other veggies. Any kind of mixture of other veggies. They can be part raw, part cooked, whatever works best for you. And then when it comes to fruits, 2 to 3 fresh fruits a day. And try to focus on the ones that we characterized as helping keep your blood sugar levels lower. So that's the berries, the apples, the pears, the fruit with pits, and then citrus fruits. And then when it comes to cooked whole grains, aim for about 2 cups of cooked whole grains, again, focusing on the ones that we highlighted. Now, let's talk about that 25% plate. If you want to prevent heart disease, which is what we're talking about here today, you don't want to have, a double layer slice of chocolate cake as your 25% plate food at every meal or even every day. So there are recommendations for the healthiest 25% plate foods to help prevent heart disease. So here are the guidelines that we are sharing with you. And of course, you're going to get these in your handout. So you want to use fat-free or low-fat dairy. There are alternative non-dairy products. Some of those are really good. Avoid the ones with lots of sugar or tropical oils like coconut oil. Use unsaturated plant oils, the liquid plant oils, instead of the saturated fat like avocado, olive oil. Half an avocado several times a week is great. 1/4 cup of nuts, so that's a small handful, or 2 tablespoons of nut butters. Again, avoid those with added sugar or fat. And then if you're going to have bread, make sure it's 100% whole grain bread. 1 slice a day. And then if you're going to enjoy pasta, you want to make sure that's 100% whole grain pasta. And a recommended serving when you eat it is about 1 cup to 1.5 cup cooked. So there's some guidelines to help prevent heart disease for your 25% part of the plate. And here's some more guidelines. These are things you really want to limit or avoid. So you want to limit red meat to 1 3-ounce serving. That's the size of a deck of cards, once a week. Skinless poultry, skinless chicken or turkey, 1 to 2 3-ounce servings, 1 or 2 twice a week, 1 to 2 times a week, 3-ounce servings, and make sure the skin is not there. And then cold water fatty fish, 2 3-ounce servings a week, and no more than 1 egg a day, or you can avoid eggs altogether and use egg whites or egg white products. And then the things to avoid are processed meats of all kinds. Processed meats of all kinds. And this, by the way, all these recommendations actually are in harmony with the recent American Heart Association dietary recommendations that they released in the last 3 months for the first time in 15 years. And these things that we're sharing with you are in harmony with those American Heart Association guidelines. You want to avoid all the tropical plant oils like palm oil, palm kernel oil, coconut cream, and avoid the partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated oils that you find in many processed foods. They're also in deep fried foods and oftentimes in fast food and restaurant food. So when it comes to heart disease, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's much easier to prevent heart disease than to try to cure it if you have it. So here are the modifiable risk factors that you can start to engage in today at your very next meal in order to prevent heart disease. And by the way, if you have heart disease, these are the same things you want to do to treat it. Stop smoking, get moving, sleep 7 to 9 hours a night, lose weight, and eat a plant predominant or high fiber diet. Here are the references that go along with our presentation. And Michelle, tell us about Full Plate. Full Plate programs and courses.
Yeah, for those of you who are new and haven't seen Full Plate before, we are sponsored by Foundation, Ardmore Institute of Health, and we're so thankful that they have made all of our programs available to the public. Some of you are already members, you're already using the programs, some of you are not, and we encourage you to go to our website, fullplateliving.org, and sign up for your free membership. You have access to all 3 of our programs, and each one of these programs give you a different glimpse or teach you from a different style of adding these high fiber plant predominant foods to what you're already eating. So it can help you shift towards eating more of these foods that help you to prevent heart disease, diabetes, obesity, the big killers in today's society. So we're so excited. We encourage you to start with the Full Plate weight loss program that introduces you to fiber foods and literally walks you through how to add them to breakfast, lunch, and dinner, even how to enjoy them while you're eating out. We also have Yummy, which is a neat cooking school environment. And Amy and I walk you through how to take the foods that you're already eating and change them into healthier meals. We talk about fat content. We talk about eating on a picnic or more portable foods. We even talk about the kitchen tools to have on hand just to make life easier when you're trying to cook healthy. And last, for anybody that is struggling with blood sugar control, we encourage you to do the Better Blood Sugar program. It is phenomenal, and it goes a step beyond just introducing you to fiber foods, but teaches you how to use fiber to help you gain better control of your blood sugars. We also have our private Facebook community, and I love the community for a number of reasons. But one of the biggest one is that we do monthly challenges. Like Amy mentioned earlier, this month's challenge is helping people get their activity in, where you have the Active 15 challenge. We just encourage each other. It's a place of encouragement, a place where we can share how we overcome various obstacles you're not in this alone. We are all in it together. Every single one of us wants to live a healthier life. We all want to avoid disease, and we can help each other get there. So I encourage you again to go to fullplateliving.org. And if you already have an account, go check out one of our programs. If you don't, sign up for one of the programs and go through it. Amy has also added in the handout for today from today's presentation. So if you click on handouts, you can go ahead and click on download and make sure that you get your copy so you can have these tips for yourself, share with family and friends as well. And
Michelle,
at
we'll
this
also
time,
have
I
it-
just want to again say thank you for being here.
I was going to
Yeah.
say, the recording will be in the membership for anyone who misses it today, or if you missed part of it and want to come back. We'll also have the handout on that landing page. And I'm going to put that link in the chat right now, so you'll have that. So if you haven't joined, join. You'll have direct access to that too with our members.
Great.
Thank you, Amy. And that's actually another great reminder is we do workshops on a regular basis for our members. Not all of them are public, so they are specific to our members. So that's another thing. When you join the membership, you can see past workshops. We do have one on diabetes. We have an introductory one to full plate living. We have one on the gut microbiome. Lots of good stuff in there, immunity. So you'll definitely want to poke around and see what else you can experience. So thank you again for being here and for all the great resources, ladies.
You're
Happy to
welcome.
share it.
Thank you.